Hey, welcome back to A Life I Choose, the place to be. Why are you laughing at me? Hey, welcome back to A Life I Choose, the place to be to actively design your life so that you can thrive. Today, I'm with sexual wellness coach Ken Cassar. Hey, Ken. What's up?
Nice to be back.
Thank you for coming back. It's great to have you.
Looking forward to it.
So today we're going to be discussing consent and boundaries, which I'm super excited about. We've never actually discussed this on A Life I Choose before, and I really believe that it's the basis of all relationships.
It's one of the really big things we get wrong a lot of the time, and it's a really kind of easy place that we can improve our communication skills and how we interact. So yeah, really important.
Okay. So Ken, when you think of consent and boundaries, like what comes to your mind first?
Well, obviously there's been a lot of talk about consent in terms of abusive, sexual, gender-based behaviors in the news the last couple of years, and really escalating over the last year with the Me Too movement and everything like that.
Yeah.
And all that is as horrible as it sounds and deserves the attention it's getting. But I think what we really want to focus on today is the more nuanced and subtle aspects of consent and boundaries in committed relationships.
Yeah, I really want our viewers to see how they can apply consent to their own lives so that they have more say over the way their relationships go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's start with a couple of basics then.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
And let's start with the fact that everybody has. I used this word earlier, and I'm going to use it again because it is actually a good word, but I'll explain what it means because it's an uncommon word. So everybody has sovereignty over their bodies.
Okay.
Which means it's your body. You have a right to it. You have a right to who touches it, how it gets touched, if it gets touched, when it doesn't get touched. It's your body. You have complete control and rights over it, and nobody can reach in, and nobody should be able to reach in without your consent.
Yeah. And sovereignty, I mean, that has sort of a sacred sort of aspect to it, no?
It's sacred, political, all
sort of something to be honored, something to be respected.
It's yours.
It's yours.
It's yours.
Yeah.
And nobody else has a right to just take from it.
Yeah.
So that's one aspect. And the other core component of this is connection. Because ultimately when we are, touching each other, that is a form of connection. And it's the most immediate and tactile form of connection. Now, good connection always requires openness. Two closed things cannot connect.
Yeah.
Only two open things can connect. So people need to be, to some degree, open. And this isn't black or white. You're not open or closed. There's degrees of openness, degrees of closeness. And the quality of our current connection will always depend on where we are in that openness. If one partner is very open, the other partner is very closed, it's still not going to work.
Yeah.
Now, openness requires safety.
Yes.
So good connection requires openness. Openness requires safety.
Okay.
If we don't feel safe, we cannot be vulnerable, we will not connect.
Yeah.
Period.
We won't risk, we won't grow, it goes into a whole bunch of stuff. But yes,
so kind of consent and boundaries are the main functions available to us in terms of creating that safety so we can have that openness.
Yeah. And this is why I feel it's the basis of all relationships, because whether it's sexual, whether it's, marriage then, or whatever, or whether it's family relationships, friendships, business relationships, if you don't have that ability to feel safe, you really cannot risk and you really cannot grow. So it applies to every aspect of life.
It really does.
Yeah.
It really does. And I guess I'm just thinking about it right now as we're talking about it. But when we talk about consent, we're kind of usually focused on the person who's doing the touching. It's that concept of have we given this person, does this person possess...
Like the Trump pussy grabbing stuff.
Like that,
yeah,
okay?
Yeah.
So we tend to be focused on the consent on the toucher.
Yeah.
But boundaries are really all about the touchee.
Okay.
In terms of their setting of boundaries.
Yeah.
And then it's up to the toucher then to respect those boundaries.
Yes.
So
kind of we'll and I think that sort of a lot of the ways that we're like raised, when you're kids, you're sort of taught, be nice, share, like very often you want to say, no, this is mine, go away, like, and you're taught, be nice, say yes, So we're so used to saying yes. A lot of us are used to saying yes when we want to say no.
And there's actually a much more harmful aspect of that as well, where we are forced as children to accept physical contact from adults that we don't want physical contact from. Go hug your grandma.
Yeah, totally. And you see the kid like, no.
You see the kid, exactly. But that's when we start to get taught that our bodies aren't ours.
Yeah, and the boundaries aren't. You shouldn't be listening to your internal instinct of I don't want this.
That's right.
Yeah, but then somebody might tell you, but it's polite.
But this has nothing to do with polite or not polite. This is safety.
Yeah.
And this is where that sovereignty over our own body starts to get eroded. And this stuff generally happens when we're tiny, pre 3 years old, which is where a lot of our formation takes place. So, someone comes up to us and then we don't want that. But they keep doing it.
Yeah, we think we have to be polite because they're authority.
And grown-ups around babies are a bunch of idiots usually. So once one person starts, everybody wants to go, and that poor baby's sitting there, enduring 5-10 minutes of touch they don't want.
Yeah.
And then the kernel is set.
Yeah.
Then that's how we become adults who go, yeah, you know what, I don't like it, but I'm obliged to put up with it.
So on a daily basis, right? Like as adults, we've had this sort of training, to sort of accept what we don't want to receive. How do you even notice when you're accepting, if you never think about this, right? You never thought about this before. How do you begin to notice that you are saying yes to things that you don't want?
You listen to your body. And it's always in your body. What we think and what we actually feel are two different things.
Yeah.
And usually we give preference and superiority to what we think, because we think mind is greater than body. Body's just something that the mind wears to get around and stuff like that.
I think therefore I am.
There's so much wisdom and knowledge and reflexive knowledge of what's good and what's not good in the body.
Yeah.
If you look at the sense of disgust.
Yeah.
So you smell something that's really rotten.
Yeah.
Your body will be doing stuff, seconds before your brain understands what's going on.
What's interesting is how you can get a sense of disgust from an interaction with someone.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be like related to food or smell or anything. It's just like, I don't like this.
Yeah. So I'd say let's get really practical and pragmatic. Things people can do.
Okay.
So I'd say we can look at it from two sides. One is this thing of, how do I know I am allowing something to happen that I'm not comfortable with? And the answer is scan. You get used to listening to your body, not desensitizing when it kicks in and starts telling you something.
Yeah.
Emotionally, how do you feel?
Yeah.
Somebody's touching you. Are you feeling resentful? Are you feeling a little bit of anger? Are you feeling a little bit of sadness? Are you feeling a little bit of fear?
Yeah. Now,
these are all indicators, and that doesn't mean that you need to, stab the person who's doing it to you.
Yeah.
As a consequence, most of this stuff is all about little adjustments.
It's like you have sort of an internal sort of. Not a compass, like something reading. It's like a thermometer, kind of a thermometer of how you feel towards the outside world. And this is what's telling you, like, yes, more please, no more please.
And it's always contextual and it's always relevant. I was reading a very interesting book about the science of touch and how it all works neurologically and etc. And it was giving an example of how, if we're walking through a really crowded street or we're at a concert and we're constantly bumping up against people, we almost don't even notice it. If we're standing alone at a bus stop and somebody brushes us, it's exactly the same physical sensation.
Yes, but it's not exactly.
But now it has completely different meaning.
Yeah.
So we kind of just want to be aware of this and just start listening.
Yeah.
There isn't one trick and you go, hey, do this and you'll always be fine. Just become more aware.
Yeah. And
if you are feeling resentful, uncomfortable, disgusted, fearful, sad,
you need to pay
whatever,
attention to that. Because I think that a lot of people sort of get this, oh, but I shouldn't be feeling this way. And they start to sort of rationalize it. Like I have a funny feeling in response to this person, and it's like, oh, but I shouldn't, this person's been so good to me, or this person has whatever. And, but you can end up in some really funny situations. I mean, if you just continuously say yes to stuff that you don't want, it's going to burn you out. And at the end of the day, you're probably going to end up mega resentful.
And a lot of that resistant reaction that you feel, regardless of what you keep or don't keep on doing, is getting locked in your body.
Yeah. So you're going to end up with muscular pain and tension,
numbness and numbing and
numbness, yeah,
etc. etc.
Sore throats sometimes from not saying what you need to say.
All sorts of manifestations, and none of them are good.
Yeah.
But you just mentioned kind of the it would be polite to, I should, I feel obliged to.
Yeah.
That can be true, and we can also set a boundary or communicate.
So it doesn't have to be, I'm all in or I'm all out.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So
how would you?
If you're with somebody you love, and that person that you love and have been with for a while reaches out to touch you, and in this moment, for this touch, at this time, that touch doesn't feel right. This is not a reflection of you or him having now become horrible people or no longer having love, or it's not. It doesn't need to be catastrophized.
Yeah.
Just say, at this particular moment, I don't know why I'm not in that space, and then that's fine.
Yeah.
And if we can accept that, then
you're totally allowed.
We're totally allowed.
And then you feel much safer you're probably going to be more likely to get into the mood later because it's your choice.
Yeah.
It's not something you feel you have to do.
Or let's not even go to, because you're more likely to get in the mood later indicates that there is an objective or an outcome, which is always going to put more pressure on us.
Yes, and I don't mean it that way.
But I understand what you're saying. So let's just reverse that out and look at it the other way.
Yeah.
If we can learn to listen to our bodies, we're less likely to be reflexively not in the mood later.
We're less likely to be reflexively, like kind of without even asking myself what I want. Just
because when we constantly allow things that we don't want at a given moment, our body gets denser and denser and denser and denser.
Yeah.
So the range of things that start to feel like the thing that we don't want grows and grows and grows and grows.
Yes.
So we're more likely then to switch off in defense.
Yes. And I think one way of coping with it, I think there are many different ways of coping. For example, anger, like sort of being habitually angry might be one of them, but I think that one of them might be sort of, I stay alone. I choose isolation because being around others is just too draining because they take too much from me. I allow them to take too much from me.
Yep. Very true.
Yeah.
So let's bounce away now and look at the other side of that equation, because we're talking about the person being touched.
Yes.
So let's talk about the toucher.
Okay.
Touch is a means of communication as much as it is anything else.
Yes.
And there's a lot that our touch says about our current state of mind and our needs. When somebody touches you, it can feel needy, it can feel greedy, it can feel aggressive, it can feel supportive, it can feel loving, it can feel warm, it can feel
and it's interesting
playful,
because
joyful.
Some people might think that this is like hocus pocus, like as if I can get the message of that person's internal state through touch. But if you think about it, like animals can sense fear, for example, in you. Like a friend of mine was telling a story where they put a snake around him, and he was like, I'm going to face my fear, but he was still totally in a state of fear. He wasn't prepared for this at all. The snake actually wrapped itself around him. You know, it was in one of these like places where there are people, and they all took care of him, and he was fine. But yes, your feelings can be transmitted. Like, you know, this isn't hocus pocus. This is human. This is not just human. It's biological. It's animal. It's life.
Sure, but even just the physical quality of the touch. You know, when somebody sort of greedily grabs genitals, breasts, ass, stuff like that, you know, there's a clear message there. When it's greedy, you can feel that it's greedy. When it's playful, you can feel that it's playful.
Yes.
Generally.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
If I want to touch you to connect, then I would imagine that my touch is going to be somewhere between too light and too heavy. You know, it's going to be right there in the middle. Okay. It's probably going to be slow. Yeah. If I want to touch you to connect, I'm not, you know, doing that.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm hugging somebody to connect with them, then my body probably doesn't want to be stiff and hard and clenched, and I want to relax and be soft, and there's a lot that's communicated in our touch.
It's a little bit like, if I take it to the Gestalt contact cycle, right, which I know not everybody's familiar with, but if you kind of think about like a cycle of experience, okay, a long time kind of thing. So it's like, you go in slow, you allow the connection to come, you don't jump straight for the goal. I think that's a way of sort of like where you could pick up like, whoa, okay, this person wants a lot from me, like too soon kind of thing.
And generally it's not just
I just moved the camera, but I think we're fine.
Yeah, okay. and generally it's not malicious.
Yeah, no.
You know, if somebody's feeling insecure, and they need validation, or they want validation, you know, and they need to be seen, then the touch is going to kind of reflect that insecurity. He's not groping because he's an asshole, although there are people who do grope because they're, you know, but it's generally in just insecurity. So, and why is all this important? All this is important so we don't touch on autopilot. Okay. We start to become a little more aware. When I'm being touched, there's signaling in my body, my physical self, my emotional self, my intellectual, which might give me clues when I am feeling uncomfortable with something. And when I'm uncomfortable with something, I have a choice to do something about it, which probably is going to make any subsequent, in that moment, contact or future contact better.
Yes, although this brings a new challenge, because once you're aware of what you don't want, then you have to break through the belief that you've been taught to be polite, or to not say no to authority, or to whatever, and you have to...
Well, here's what you've been taught. You've been taught that once you love somebody, it is your obligation to give them full and unfettered access to your body. How does that sit with you?
That's not good.
Not good. I did it that way on purpose.
That's all.
Okay? But whatever you say now about being polite, etc., is going to be some aspect or some degree of that statement.
Yeah.
You've been taught you do not have sovereignty over your body. Your body is something you have to give to another person to do with what they want.
Yeah.
And that's exaggerated. It's exaggerated on purpose. Just to bring the point across, because if we keep that in mind, then we start to understand how important it is for us to actually practically express our sovereignty over our body.
I mean, the image that comes to mind when you say this, that you give yourself over to somebody 100%, is I get this image of this toddler, you know, being pulled to do something, and they're just kicking and screaming like, you know, get off me, like, I don't want to do this.
I wonder how many people's sex life that describes.
Oh my God.
You know, it's there's, you know that saying, cruel to be kind?
Yeah.
You know, it isn't really being cruel, because just, you know, if you're stepping on my toe, I have no issue saying, do you mind just moving a little? You're stepping on my toe.
You'd be surprised some people do have an issue saying that. Yeah, I know you know this, but it's like, like...
You know, so...
Yeah.
And
it's just taking it to another level.
Yeah, so let's talk about some really practical stuff we can do.
Okay.
Okay? So let's talk about setting boundaries first, because people misunderstand boundaries. People think boundaries are laws. So if I set a boundary in place, this applies forever and in all circumstances.
Yeah.
And that's not true. Boundaries are much more productively approached about when they are thought of. You set boundaries about the moment, about the specific moment, in this specific moment, and for this specific moment.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with setting a boundary now and changing it in 30 seconds. Why? Because our physiological state changes constantly.
Yes.
I may feel tense at this specific moment. I may feel tense because I can feel a burp emerging.
Yeah.
Or a fart emerging, and that's causing my body to clench, so I'm not really... And then it passes one way or another in 30 seconds, and then my body relaxes, so then I feel completely
More
different.
open.
So setting boundaries is something you just said about right now.
Well, then what if somebody tells you like, but then it's too changing, it's too, you know, like, goes from one thing to the other, it's too like erratic.
A couple of things actually. When you get used to setting boundaries about things that matter, and then we go back to feeling what's going on, you know, if you feel that something's not right, very often if you just go, you know what, let's say you start having sex. So things are heating up, hands are flying, limbs are flying all over the place, stuff's going on. You know, we're all multitasking away in search of this wonderful outcome, etc., etc. And you start to feel uneasy for whatever reason. Just pause it.
Yeah.
Say, hey, listen, can we just time out and cuddle for 2 minutes? Let everything calm down. Let your body recenter. Take a deep breath. Check to see if there's anything major going on.
Yes.
That you need to deal with. Is there any stress cycle that you need to complete by saying something? You know,
this goes into that aspect of safety.
Exactly. And then the partner needs to learn that this is also okay.
Yes, and it's not necessarily about them.
It's not about you.
It's not that they did anything wrong or that person is not attracted. Like, you don't need to go and create the story.
That's right.
Like, just stay with what is.
Just pause, take a breath, stay connected.
Yeah.
Just changing the activity and then allow that to happen.
Yeah.
And if you talk about this at a time that's not when you're having sex, that's great, because then you can start to agree, hey, listen, you know, sometimes I just need to pause for a minute or two, calm down, reconnect with you, because my mind goes off somewhere or something, and I'm not here. And
exactly.
And
the pause allows the nervous system to
calm down, quieten down.
You can breathe. And then it's like what you said at the beginning, like safety, connection is not possible without safety.
Without openness, and openness is impossible without safety.
There you go.
Yeah. So that was kind of thing number one, which is just the ability to sense what's going on, communicate it. Don't communicate it like, you know, this is the end of my value as a sexual being or a partner or a woman or a man or anything else. Just calm down, put it in context, and talk about it between yourselves so that it doesn't become a big issue. Because the problem is because we're not used to setting boundaries, because we're used to tolerating our arm going numb.
Yes.
While we're trying to have sex, and we don't want to say anything because it'll ruin the moment and shit like that.
Yeah, but then you're super uncomfortable, so you can't actually be in the moment.
And then because we spend so much effort in clenching and stuff, tolerating stupid stuff which doesn't really matter, where minor adjustments would make a big difference, then the smallest thing becomes the catalyst for the biggest disagreements, disappointments, resentment, and stuff like that.
And don't you feel like there's a lot, like, sometimes we don't tell someone what's not okay for us because we really don't want to make them uncomfortable in any way. Mm-hmm. There's like this belief like, I don't want to ever frustrate someone else, so I will tolerate all the frustration. Sure. And it's like sort of there needs to be a little bit of trust that like you can frustrate someone, as in you don't go and do it purposefully like you want to hurt them, but it's like it's okay for somebody to be a little bit uncomfortable for some time.
You're also assuming that it's frustrating or it's going to make the person uncomfortable.
Yeah, but
me saying, do you mind if I move my arm because it's gone to sleep?
Yeah, but
may have no impact at all on the other person.
Unless you're sort of, yes, no, you're right, and you said it very clearly. You said it very, very clearly, but I think it's going back to what you're saying about being super clear. Because the clearer you are, the less likely you're going to misinterpret.
Sure. There's a wonderful saying that I heard years ago, and I love it. And it goes, if I can't trust you to say no when you need to say no, I can never trust that you mean yes when you say yes.
Yes.
Okay, now that's perfectly logical, right? Makes perfect sense.
Makes total sense.
Now, think about that in a sexual dynamic. Okay? Mm-hmm. And the I can't trust you to say yes, that you mean yes when you say yes, is the interesting bit about this. Mm-hmm. Because one of the most pervasive emotions that's brought into probably most sexual encounters, regardless of how conscious we are of it or not, is insecurity.
Yeah, fear.
Insecurity. Am I good enough? Am I doing it right? Am I the best lover this person's ever had? Like, that's important.
Yeah, it's the basis of fear. Like, I'm not enough. Like, and then I don't belong.
So look at this I can't trust your yes thing. Mm-hmm. So you're having sex with your partner seems to be having a good time, but you can't trust that what you're seeing is real. What's actually going on.
Yes.
So unless you show me that you can say no when you need to say no, I can never trust that when you say yes, you actually mean yes.
And if I can't trust, then I cannot relax. And if I cannot relax, then I cannot feel safe. And if I'm not safe, then I cannot be open. And if I am not open, then we cannot connect.
And we are condemned to a lifetime of insecure sex.
Yes.
And just missing in terms of connection.
And I think this is what I mean by the discomfort and frustration. Because yes, sometimes when you say no, you are going to frustrate the other. Because the other might not want to hear no. But this is a totally normal part of being with another person, of being in a relationship, that you do go through times where you frustrate each other. And that's the only way that growth can happen. If you're always going, yes dear, kind of, I agree with you, you don't really know, you don't really see what's happening, you don't really express yourself, there's no growth. So part of it is getting into these moments where you're like, I don't get it, and I don't get why you have to be this way, and it's okay.
Yeah, if there's no difference, there's no friction, then it's boring.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. But again, let's not overestimate. Our perception of what's going to frustrate somebody is generally much worse than that person's actual frustration.
Yeah.
So try it. Try it on.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing about sex is that we seem to, when we're talking about sex, we very often kind of just lose our basic manners.
Yeah.
We don't say no thank you, yes please, it would be better if,
Yes.
I don't like that. Not, and then if you say something like, it would be wonderful if you did this, as opposed to, I don't like what you're doing. Because again, look at when most people have sex, they guess. They guess what to do next and what the partner's going to like, etc. Because nobody actually says, this is what I'd like right now. So you start guessing.
As well as performing, we're trying to be mind readers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And how much better, because if I do something and you say no, And what, should I guess something else now?
Yeah.
Should I
What
guess
would
something
you
else?
like instead?
Shall I keep guessing until I either get it right, you give up, and just start faking that what I just did was right?
Yeah.
Or until you get so pissed off that you just want to kind of get up and go do something different?
Or I stop approaching because I can never get it right.
And my insecurity takes over, and
Yeah.
So communication isn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
The last thing I wanted to talk about was just for the toucher.
Okay.
Start to be more mindful of your touch.
Okay.
You know,
this
doesn't mean be so concentrated on your touch that you're now, you know, kind of really scientific about it. But
you become robotic.
Yeah. But sometimes, you know, maybe when you're touching, now that we've talked about it being needy or greedy or stuff like that, maybe sometimes you'll just be in the throes of it and you'll recognize that the touch is happening and you don't know why.
It's like your body's done it without you consciously choosing to do it.
And at that moment, don't stop, but slow down.
Okay.
At that moment, just literally
Slow down.
Slow down. Don't withdraw. Just slow down. Focus on where your hands are, or whatever else you're touching with is, and just go, okay, what's my intention behind this touch? And just try and make it a little more loving, a little more supportive, a little safer.
Okay.
You know, and if you want to play and practice just for fun with your partner, sit down and practice and go, okay, let's just sit down and touch each other with our hands for a little while, and let's practice different touches. So give me a touch which you think is communicating love. Give me a touch which you think is communicating support. Give me a touch which you think is greedy. Give me a touch which you think is playful.
And just
play with it.
That's interesting.
And it can be a fun 5-10 minutes of just literally playing with it.
Playing and...
Come on, give me your greedy touch. Give me your needy touch. Give me your loving touch.
And there's
give me
the
your supporting
consent in
touch.
it as well, because you're saying give me.
Yeah.
Like, cool. So Ken, if you were to ask our viewers now, like something that they can reflect on, so that they can sort of become more aware of their own consent and giving consent, what would it be?
So we've talked about boundaries a lot today, and I'd be really interested in knowing what your challenges are when it comes to being aware of your boundaries and being able to communicate them. And I think we all have challenges with that. And it would be very interesting to hear what people have to say in terms of challenges.
Yeah,
with
cool.
setting boundaries.
Okay, so that's Ken's question for you. Okay, so what's your biggest challenges with setting boundaries? And I'd also like to ask you, what's your biggest takeaway from today's discussion? So what's one thing that you want to remember from today's discussion that you can hold with you and apply in your own life? So leave us comments down below. It's a great place to have conversation. We will check in every so often, and maybe we will reply. No, maybe we will reply. And so thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next show.
Thank you.
Bye.
High five.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Emma.